Okay, we are live, and let's get started to our session in the concept of the International Turkish Energy Union Congress, organized by the TESPAM and the Ahmet Yesevi University. So thanks to TESPAM and the Ahmet Yesevi University to organize this kind of the great, the Congress and provide us kind of the, opportunity to join this great Congress. So this session is a kind of the, the special session regarding the, the oil and natural gas resource in Turkish world. So we will talk about the, the resource, the fossil fuel resource and conventional energy resource in the Turkish world and Turkish country. And hopefully it would be a kind of a great seminar and great session. And at the beginning of this session, I just want to have a kind of introduction to our speakers. We've got four respected speakers and energy experts and that accompany us in the concept of this. This session. The first speakers is Dr. Azimhan Kitakonov from the Eurasian Research Institute. The next one is Dr. Kenan Aslanlı from the TESPAM Azerbaijan, and then we've got Dr. Paolo Sorbello from Ca' University of Venice, and at the end we've got the president of the TESPAM, dear Oğuzhan Aker. So this is a kind of the great session, and each speaker have a kind of the 50 minutes to speak, and just want to thank to all of you. The speakers to join us, and also just want to thank to the audience to joining us. If you have any question, you can write down the questions, and I will ask all the questions. If we got any time at the end of the session. Okay, so it would be better to go ahead and get me starting with the first talk and first presentation by Dr. Azimhan Kitakonov from the University of Al Farabi, Kazakh National University. The title of the presentation is the macroeconomics consequence of the renewable energy development, and he will talk about the effect of the renewable energy development on the economic growth. I just want to have kind of introduction and a brief biography for Dr. Azimhan. He's a senior research fellow at the Eurasian Research Institute. He has received his bachelor and the master and the PhD degrees from the Al Farabi University, and he's working as the associate professor at the Al Farabi Kazakh National University and Higher School of Economics and Business, and also he's teaching lots of the course regarding the macroeconomics related disciplines. Okay, we are ready to have your presentation, Dr. Azimhan. Dr. Azimhan, can you? Dr. Azimhan? Maybe we've got a problem regarding the internet connection by the...
Yeah. Sometimes the connection may result in these kinds of things.
Dr. Azimhan, can you hear my voice? So it would be better to go to the next speaker.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got kind of the connection problems with the Dr. Azimhan, and hopefully it will be fixed at the maybe end of the session. So the next first and the next talk comes from Dr. Kenan Aslanli. The title of the presentation is the oil and natural gas resources in Azerbaijan. I think that he's working as the kind of the spatial energy special in the Iran Research Center, Economic Research Center. And he is also a part of the TESPAM Azerbaijan members. And this is your turn, Dr. Kenan, and we are ready to have your presentation.
Thank you very much. I want to thank organizers for inviting me to this distinguished event and distinguished panel. I will actually speak about the Azerbaijan's oil and natural gas resources and export markets, new trends, and some actually consequence for the national economy as well. Experts, researchers, and scholars from the Azerbaijan, when they talk about the country's oil industry, they start from the well-known fact that it's the oldest oil country in the world. Actually, I a little bit thought about that. Does it worth to mention that? And later I realized that maybe actually it's worth to mention that because it is not just repeating the fact that it's a country where the first modern oil exploitation started, but it's also a fact that reflects some repercussions for today, some positive, but mostly negative repercussions for today's. What I want to, I intend to say. I directly refer to the well-known book of the well-known expert Václav Smil, Oil, on the part of Azerbaijan. He said that the place with the longest tradition of local crude oil use is undoubtedly the Absheron Peninsula of the Baku region in Azerbaijan. Longest tradition of crude oil use. And then he adds a lot of list of first. First oil distilling factory in Baku, first refinery in Baku, first exploratory oil well in Baku, etc., etc. So it's a country that has almost 170 years of traditions of oil exploitation, crude oil use, oil processing, and export. And as I said before, it has a positive and negative repercussions for today. So maybe positive repercussion here is the experience, some historical experience, past dependency, and etc. But also it has a negative repercussions for today's. It means the unprecedented rate of depletion of the oil resource, especially in onshore fields, environmental challenge, lack of experience to diversify the economy, and etc., etc. So after all these 170 years exploitation of oil resources of Azerbaijan, especially in the capital city Baku, the oil reserves of the country assessed as around the 7 billion barrels that account for 0.5% of global reserves. And the largest oil field is the Azeri Tragan Deepwater Juneshli. That's located in the east of Baku. That's an onshore field in the Caspian Sea. And it discovered in the late 1970s and early 1980s. But taking into account the very complicated geological location and features, then the Soviet Union was not able to exploit that or to start exploration and production because of lack of technology and etc. And the country started to actually exploit that field after the gaining independence in 1991 and 1994. The country signed the production sharing agreements with the foreign companies. and started to extract this oil and natural gas also from this field. That is a little bit individual reservoirs that locate the very close clusters and consist of not only oil and some natural gas. In terms of natural gas, the country's reserves estimated as around 3 trillion cubic meters. And here I want to underline that the assessments regarding to the Azerbaijan's natural gas reserves actually revised in the last few years because of discovery of the new fields and new layers in the old fields. In terms of oil and gas reserves, maybe the country is not one of the major leading countries in the world. So we cannot compare with Russia in terms of oil reserves, or with Saudi Arabia, or we cannot compare with Turkmenistan or Qatar in terms of gas reserves. But it is oil and gas reserves and exports play a very crucial role in the energy security of the certain markets, especially in the European markets. But there are some changing dynamics here that I will actually touch a little bit later. But also these reserves have very a crucial role for the national economy of Azerbaijan. As I said before, the country actually has not succeeded to diversify the economy, and currently oil and gas sector accounts for almost 90% of total annual export, around 65-70% of budget revenues, of fiscal revenues, and around 40-45% of the GDP. So diversification of the national economy is a huge challenge that's underlined in all state strategies, programs, and plans till today and for the future period. And more than 60% of industrial output of Azerbaijan was produced in extractive industries, that mean mostly oil and gas sector. Last year, I want to introduce now some up-to-date figures and to explain some major points of the oil gas industry of the country in terms of the dynamics, internal dynamics, external dynamics, and you will see some geopolitical repercussions of these resources and their exports. The last year, the country's crude oil and condensate production were about 34.5 million tons, that were 8% less in comparison with 2019. And approximately 70% of the total annual production of Azerbaijan was produced by international consortium led by British Petroleum and other oil gas companies. So this is one of the main features of Azerbaijan oil gas industry. So oil and natural gas production is realized by international consortium. International consortium and its members dominate countries' oil and gas production. In terms of oil, international consortium that's called Azerbaijan International Operating Company has a very interesting and changing composition. Some companies, especially some American companies, actually decided to sell their shares in these huge Azeri Nationally projects, and the newcomers and new companies actually entered to the game and purchased the shares. And currently, if we look at the shareholders of Azerbaijan's Azeri Nationally project, that means the largest oil gas cluster, we can see that the British Petroleum dominates, and together with SOCAR, national oil company. But in addition to these two companies, we have INPEX and Itochu, two Japan companies, ExxonMobil, American company, Equinor or former Statoil, Turkish Petroleum, and MOL, Hungarian company that recently, just 2 years ago, actually got the stake from the Chevron company, and actually were one of the shareholders. And also, you can see that the companies or the countries that own these companies and their kind of supportive role for some regional and geopolitical maneuvers of Azerbaijan. The country, the share of SOCAR, National Oil Company, in the total annual oil production is around 20%, and also 10% of the total production was a condensate, gas condensate from the Shah Deniz gas field, again produced by international consortium. The country is part of OPEC Plus initiative to balance the world oil market and to stabilize oil price. And the latest commitment that country pledged to comply is to maintain the production level around 600,000 barrels per day. And regarding to the information of Minister of Energy, Azerbaijan always comply with these commitments under the OPEC Plus initiative. And one of the interesting issue here is that I already underlined the huge historical background of the country in the oil industry. The country has already reached its peak in oil production in 2010, and later we see the gradually decreasing oil production. Around 80% of the crude oil and condensate that produced in the Azerbaijan exported to the world market using different pipelines. Azerbaijan has actually different options, different pipelines to export their oil reserves. The largest one is the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan oil pipeline. Some two other alternatives are the northern direction that's exploited by SOCAR mainly. It's a Baku-Novorossiysk oil pipeline, and western route export pipeline that's exploited by consortium. That's a Baku-Supsa oil pipeline. Actually, Baku-Novorossiysk and Baku-Supsa oil pipelines carry very minimal share of Azerbaijan's oil export. The main portion of the oil export actually is exported using the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan. What is interesting also here to see the changing dynamics in terms of export markets of Azerbaijan's crude oil. If you look at the top 10 largest importers of Azerbaijan's crude oil, we can see here the list of countries, the mostly European countries, leading by Italy, and then some non-European countries, including Israel, that was number 2 in 2019, India, and then also China. What is interesting here? If you would see the same list of top 10 importance of Azerbaijan's crude oil for 10 years ago, for example, in 2010, you wouldn't see the name of these Asian countries like China and India in the list of top 10 importance of Azerbaijan. Then, around 10 years ago, they imported only 3% of Azerbaijan's exported crude oil. That figure now it's around 12%. I call this as a slow Asianization of Azerbaijan oil export, despite the fact that European market still dominates in Azerbaijan's total oil export. And also there is a asymmetric interdependence with European market, where Azerbaijan actually provide less than 5% of the EU's total crude oil import, but European countries imported almost 70% of Azerbaijan exported total crude oil. But again, here there is a Asianization, slow, gradual Asianization of export market. But when we look at the gas production and gas export, we see that unlike the decreasing oil production, Azerbaijan has gradually soaring gas production. And in terms of export markets, here in gas sector, we can actually call this Europeanization of export markets, unlike the slow Asianization of oil export market. What does it mean? It means some years ago, Azerbaijan exported the natural gas only to the neighbor countries, especially to Iran and Russia, based on swap agreements, and some small portion to the Georgia. But now Turkey, Georgia, and gradually European countries started to dominate in Azerbaijan natural gas production. Last year, the country produced 37 billion cubic meter of gas. That was a 4% more gas production than in 2019. It means we see production decrease in oil, but production increase in natural gas. Again, international consortium dominate in Azerbaijan natural gas production, but composition of shareholders a little bit different in gas sector and very interesting. So in gas production, Azerbaijan's largest gas field is a Shah Deniz gas field, and the shareholder, the same companies are the shareholders in Shah Deniz, and also South Caucasus pipeline that actually export the gas of Shah Deniz field to the Turkish market. These shareholders, again, three shareholders are same with oil consortium. These are BP, SOCAR, and Turkish Petroleum. But in addition, in this gas consortium, we see new actors. These are Petronas company from Malaysia and two companies from the neighbor countries, Lukoil from Russia and Nikko National Iranian oil company's subsidiary from Iran. So that was also kind of geopolitical maneuver of Azerbaijan to include these two countries from the Russia and Iran to the gas consortium. These two countries very harshly opposed the exploitation of oil gas reserves of Caspian Sea in mid-1990s. That was a little bit a geopolitical background of the energy decision. In terms of natural gas export, Azerbaijan is part of very complex gas value chain that we can call it's called in literature, Southern Gas Corridor, that comprise of Shah Deniz Phase 2, and then Sangachal Terminal, and three pipelines. One is a South Caucasus pipeline, and another one is a Trans-Anatolian pipeline, and the third one is a Trans-Adriatic pipeline. It's a kind of sequence of pipelines that connects Caspian, Azerbaijan natural gas to the European market, especially the south part of the Europe. And again, here we can see the different actors, despite the fact that BP and SOCAR are unchanging shareholders of the Southern Gas Corridor. But when we look at the Trans-Anatolian pipeline here, in addition to SOCAR and BP, we have a BOTAŞ with 30% share. And if we look at the Trans-Adriatic pipeline that connects the Turkish-Greece border to the Italy's natural gas system, here we can see mostly European companies like Snam, Flaxus, Enagás, Expo, in addition to the BP and SOCAR. So this is a very huge, very complex and regional set. And now if we look at the very up-to-date export figures, we can see that Turkey actually dominates in Azerbaijan total gas export, accounting more than 80% of total gas export of Azerbaijan. And then 20% of total gas exports went to Georgia last year. But what is new? The new actually development here is starting the gas flow through TAP, Trans-Adriatic pipeline, to the European market. That process started in last December in 2020, and this month, Trans-Adriatic pipeline company announced that the first billion cubic meters of natural gas from Azerbaijan has now entered to the European market. It means a kind of Europeanization of gas exports market, and it means also no more gas swaps with the neighbor countries as Iran and Russia. The last 2 points that I want to underline here is that despite some limited oil gas reserves and very huge history of oil gas exploitation, the main asset or added value of Azerbaijan in the regional oil gas landscape is the well-established oil gas export infrastructure, including pipelines, terminals, storage infrastructure, and other infrastructure part that offer for Central Asian countries and even for the Iran to have an alternative routes for energy exports. And it offers this infrastructure to the Central Asian countries to export their the energy reserves bypassing Russia. The Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan use BTC to export oil, but for gas, it's a little bit uncertain. Another last issue here is that, as I said before, national oil companies, SOCAR, doesn't dominate in Azerbaijan's oil gas exploration and production activities. And in order to compensate that, the company partly switched from the upstream to midstream and the mainly downstream projects, including refineries, fuel stations, and purchasing gas sales and distributions companies, especially in the region, including Turkey, Georgia, Ukraine, and some European countries, including Romania and Switzerland. These are main dynamics and the trends of Azerbaijan's oil gas export and oil gas industry. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your presentation, for your decent presentation and sharing your information for us. I think that we've got a kind of limitation in time and maybe we will have Dr. Azim Khan at the end of the session. So it would be better to jump into the next speaker. And then if you've got some sort of question at the end of the session, we will discuss about it. So the next speaker is Dr. Paolo Sorbello from Ka-Foscari University of the Venice. The title of his presentation is about the recent transformations of oil and gas political economy in Central Asia. Dr. Sorbello is a kind of the researcher and the journalist focusing on oil and gas in Central Asia. He holds a PhD from the University of Glasgow, and he is a research fellow at the University of Ka-Foscari at the University of Ka-Foscari in Venice, and a board member of the Observatory on Central Asia and the Caspian. So we will be ready to have Dr. Paolo, and go ahead, it's your turn.
You can hear me well. There's a bit of renovation upstairs. I hope they're not disrupting my speech. I would like to thank you very much for the invitation, and I would like to say that I'm really impressed with the conference and the Congress, because at these times, these difficult times of pandemics, organizing such a big event must be really, really tough. But let me get into my brief presentation. I would like to touch upon the three main exporting countries in Central Asia, the three main oil and gas exporting countries, that is Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. And by doing so, I would like to draw some between them, and I would like to then also focus on the specific countries. Obviously, when we think about Central Asia, we think of a region at the crossroads between Eastern and Eastern and Western energy consumers. But it is also importantly a growing region in terms of consumption and of energy and connectivity of energy infrastructures. In a way, we have an idea of Central Asia being at the core of the new Silk Road, which goes from China westwards towards Europe. But in the case of energy, for example, the road that was built in the past 15 years was actually eastwards. There's eastward gas road, we could call it, an eastwards oil road. And I think China in this case is an important player. It's a neighboring country to and the volume that gas, the volume of gas that Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan have exported to China has actually grown by a factor of 10 in the past decades, which is quite significant in terms of the eastward vector. If we talk about the westward vector of Central Asia exports, the European Union is 58% dependent on imported energy supplies, but yet Central Asia remains a marginal actor for the overall consumption of European energy. So this makes into an interesting parallel between more dependence from the side of China rather than the Western vectors. China's gas contracts are fixed on a take-or-pay regime, which is also linked to the loan repayment of Chinese investment in Central Asia infrastructure. Essentially, the actors involved are closely entangled in a long-term gas partnership because they have to trade, essentially, by the contract rules. However, last year, for example, with COVID-19 pandemic, we had a disruption in the supplies, which was legally allowed by the contracts that China signed with Central Asian countries. So, due to force majeure, essentially, China suspended gas supplies from Turkmenistan, mostly because internal demand in China fell dramatically. The relationship between China on the one hand and Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan on the other hand, in terms of gas supplies, is one of monopsony, which is in economic jargon is the exact opposite of a monopoly. A monopoly is created when there is only one seller, whereas a monopsony exists in a system with only one customer. In this case, the one customer is China. And if and when China drops out of the picture, then Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan will have to struggle to find new buyers. And the reason that they have to struggle to find new buyers is that natural gas, is an infrastructure-dependent resource. You cannot export gas in almost any other way than pipelines, except LNG, but Central Asia does not really have any LNG potential so far. And so it will be undoubtedly difficult for the exporters to find or build new routes for their gas. Also, despite long-standing plans, many analysts agree that a Trans-Caspian gas pipeline is both unfeasible and uneconomical. And Kenan earlier mentioned this regarding the difficulty of potential gas connections across the Caspian. And I would like to underline the fact that of all these grandiose plans of the past 20 years in terms of infrastructure construction, only the Caspian Pipeline Consortium, which is an oil pipeline from Kazakhstan to Russia, and the pipelines to China, both oil and gas, were built. And this should tell us something about the financial feasibility of complex infrastructure, even at times of high oil prices, because at the beginning of the 2000s, oil prices were quite good and could potentially allow for more investment. But then we had the global financial crisis, and banks became increasingly wary of risking capital in these ventures. And one of the examples of this potential infrastructure project is still mostly on paper and being built on the ground is TAPI, the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline, which was finally approved in 2015 after more than a decade in delays, and is still under construction. Reports that the crucial Afghan section is still being behind schedule might mean that the coming online of this pipeline will be delayed further, and Turkmenistan's exports to Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India will not start anytime soon. And this will maintain Turkmenistan as dependent on China's imports. In terms of imports, the structure of Turkmenistan's imports, it's actually interesting that the first partner is Turkey, which exports to Turkmenistan a wide range of products and leads before Russia and China. But in terms of exports, it's pretty much one directional towards China. Turkmenistan and Russia had a pricing battle in 2016, which led to a halt in Turkmen exports to Russia. But then diplomatic and economic considerations led the parties to resolve the issue, and in mid-2019, Russia decided to resume imports, and now Russia has a plan to import 5.5 billion cubic meters annually. The neighboring Uzbekistan also produces a sizable amount of natural gas, around 60 billion cubic meters, but it has a target to decrease actually its reliance on exports and to try to consume its gas domestically. Most of its export potential, about 6.5 BCM, is directed to China. And the Uzbek government might eye a marginal expansion of this export capacity towards China, especially when Line D of the Central Asia-China pipeline is completed. But the winner in the case of an increase in exports, gas exports, would be Russia's Lukoil, one of Uzbekistan's main upstream producers and also one of the only companies allowed to export. If we switch to Kazakhstan, the country has a complex web of regional relations in terms of gas, with exchanges and exports with Russia and the participation in the Central Asia-China pipeline. The government's goal, however, is focused on the domestic dimension because the country is striving to connect the cities to the gas grid and to reduce its dependency on coal for domestic heating and industrial production. The government says that it is likely that gas export actually might fall in the next years. In terms of oil, which is Kazakhstan's most important export commodity, Kazakhstan is a regional leader, and it plans to continue pumping crude to the west via the Caspian Pipeline Consortium, to the north via the pipeline to Samara in Russia, and to the east to China. Last year, oil supplies to China were reduced both due to the pandemic and due to technical issues at a field in the Aktobe region, which is also operated by Chinese companies. And Kazakhstan has also allowed Russia to use its pipeline network to export oil to China. So Russian oil was transiting through Kazakhstan towards China. And this is another proof that Kazakhstan has a key role to play at the crossroads between Asia and Europe in this sense. Still, Kazakhstan's main export markets, similarly to Azerbaijan actually, remain in Europe, with Italy and the Netherlands as the main customers of its oil exports. To sum up, I think the future of the region will be one of stability and multi-vector foreign energy policies directed towards both East and West. power stability in this sense is crucial for the customers, and the power stability in the region is crucial for the customers. Because we have seen several incidents that have led to cutoff in supplies in the past few years. Russian Turkmenistan, as I mentioned before, but also the supplies in between gas supplies between Central Asian countries and China. And so there might be further disruptions, but as long as the governments in Central Asia are stable and maintain a constant, let's say, foreign energy policy, then we shouldn't see much change coming up. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your great presentation. I think that Dr. Azim Khan are connected to the session. Dr. Azim Khan, can you hear me?
Yes. Sorry
Okay.
for interrupting the order.
Okay,
So
thank you for you joining us, and we've got a limitation in time, so it would be better to go through your presentation, and it's your turn, and we are ready to have your presentation, Dr. Azim Khan.
Okay, thank you.
If you have any kind of a problem, Dr. Azim Khan?
I guess yes, the problems are continuing. So something went wrong with something went wrong. So let me just give my speech. So without my presentation, so I have some issues here.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So in general, I want to talk about macroeconomic effects of renewable energy consumption, and these effects are huge. So that is why it is really interesting to reveal some direct consequences of renewable energy development in many countries. So according to many findings, the energy consumption for different country groups, renewable energy consumption for different country groups are increasing, both for developing countries and for the rich club as the OECD group. At the same time, we can find that percentage of renewable energy consumption in OECD countries has increased over time, but the opposite is true for the non-OECD countries. So a percentage of total energy consumption of the renewable energy in total consumption is permanently decreasing since early 90s for non-OECD countries. So, and one of the basic questions here is whether development of renewable energy consumption and generally higher consumption of renewable energy cause economic growth. So according to many econometric estimates, and according to both linear and non-linear models, there is a huge impact, and in particular positive impact of renewable energy development on economic growth. But this impact is particularly for the OECD countries. And however, also some kind of modeling also shows that non-OECD countries and other developing countries would benefit significantly from investing in renewable energy sources. And also there is list of indicators which generally drive higher demand for renewable energy in the OECD group. So these drivers and these variables include per capita income. So higher per capita income means higher demand for renewable energy. Also, the list of these indicators include carbon emissions per capita and real oil prices. Also, according to many findings, higher level of economic globalization also promotes renewable energy development. And general policy recommendations include that the OECD group should increase investment in this field, and the benefits from this investment will be in the long run and will come in the long run because they are wide and include wide range of issues. At the same time, governments in the OECD group with higher income should also promote investment in other group of countries, in particular developing countries, which are unable to develop in this group without the help of the rich countries. At the same time, renewable energy development has a huge and positive impact on employment, and this is evident on the example of the United States market. So renewable energy jobs are booming in the United States, creating stable. And according to many findings, the wages in the renewable energy sector are higher than other sectors. So that is why there is a recent statistics. I don't take into consideration 2020 because of the pandemic-induced restrictions and negative consequences. But in general, nearly 3.3 million Americans working in clean energy. So this number outnumbering fossil fuel workers by 3-1, and nearly 335,000 people work in the solar industry, and more than 111,000 work in the wind industry, compared to 211,000 working in coal mining and other fossil fuel extraction. And the job creation and the employment in the renewable energy is permanently increasing and outnumbering the traditional fossil fuel industries. At the same time, there is also a very important aspect as the micro aspect, because many corporations around the world started to change their strategies and started to penetrate the market of the renewable energy. One of their most recent success stories is the Danish multinational Ørsted, which has gone from supplying 85% of its power with fossil fuels in 2009 to supplying 88% with renewable energy. And it expects to reach net zero energy generation and operations by 2025 and to eliminate all emissions.
Dear Doctor, we just have 2 minutes. Just please wrap it up.
Okay, thank you. So, in sum, the macroeconomic consequences of renewable energy development are positive. The renewable energy development causes higher economic growth. It contributes to the job creation. It also changes the strategies of many corporations, which started to obtain higher market value and also started to generate higher profits according to many findings. So, and I want to conclude that in Central Asia and in general Turkic world, renewable energy development remains low, despite many countries of the group started to obtain positive results because of higher investment. And as Turkic countries differ substantially in terms of economic development, it is important for them to invest in each other's economy and to foster economic integration, where the renewable energy can be one of the key aspects. However, internal strategies and priorities remain key for this process. And also, their governments of the Turkic world countries should consider broader benefits from renewable energy, such as job creation and contribution to economic growth. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. And at the end of this session, we've got a kind of the debate presentation by the president of the TESPAM, dear Mr. Oğuzhan Akgener, and we are ready to have your presentation.
Thanks very much, Dr. Ali, and I would like to thank to all our speakers for their nice presentations and nice speeches. We have a very limited time. It's only 8 minutes to complete the session. I would like to share some presentations with you, some graphs and maybe some projections of TESPAM. I think you can see my presentation. Regarding, actually, I would like to all our speakers somehow mentioned the Azerbaijan and the eastern side of Caspian Sea. In this regard, I initially want to start with the Turkey's conditions. As you know, Turkey does not have enough oil and gas, and we have a very limited proved oil and gas reserves, and you can see from the table only around, this is these values are taken from our MAPEC, which is a governmental organization, and we have only 0.3 billion barrels of proved oil reserves, and only the gas, let me see, the producible gas as the reserves, it was 7 billion cubic meters, but these values were taken previous of the latest Black Sea discovery. As you know, as our governmental company declared that discovery has around 405 billion cubic meters of proved reserves that can be producible reserves, I can say. In this regard, this discovery changed all the balances in Turkey. However, in addition to this discovery, Turkey's energy hunger is very high, and I'm going to show you the pictures. But by generally overviewing the oil and gas market in Turkey, regarding initially the upstream, and in the downstream and the midstream, we are very strong regarding with the refineries, the infrastructures, and like that. However, from the upstream side, we see only huge governmental oriented attractions at the latest last decade, due to the governmental attempts by getting some drilling and seismic ships regarding with the offshore areas. We have put good parts, and also this attempts has a geostrategical side on the EastMed and the energy transportations. And in addition, we have to add there is no huge players, hence there is no huge fishes in the Turkish discovered areas. That's why we don't have huge players and huge fishers like Exxon, Chevron, like that, BP in E&P market in Turkey. In this graph, I would like to show you that here you can see our nearly all the oil resources are around here in the southeastern side of Turkey, and here in this basin we have gas, very small fields usually by comparing with the other oil producing countries. And around here we have discovered the latest, we have completed our latest discovery in the Black Sea here. That was the biggest fish that we have catched up to this time. It was very important. And this map shows, again, taken from MAPEC resources. This map shows the seismic activities of Turkey that we have completed. You see oil and gas areas, oil and gas basins here. We have done lots of seismic activities. We have with the latest upcoming years, we have done lots of seismic activities, again, our marine borders, as you can see around the Cyprus and in the Black Sea. And by the way, I have to mention that we already have a huge area that we haven't studied, and it's waiting for us to continue to work. And maybe we can find some additional potentials in Turkey, and the first fish may change every dynamics regarding with the E&P market in Turkey. And from the side of the consumption, as you see, in this graph, you see currently oil is the biggest energy source in the total energy market in Turkey, and oil is followed by coal, and the gas is the third largest energy resource, which is supplying in the consumption equation in Turkey. In the future, while as you can see here, these are the test pumps long-term projections. As you can see in this picture, around we have an incremental rate, but decreasing incremental rate in oil consumption in Turkey. We have put all the electrical car and other similar energy transition trends into this equation. And in electricity balances, you see gas plants are important and is continue to be important again, but the gas portion in the general equation, in the general electricity equation, will decrease. And you can see the gas consumption values of Turkey up to 2100s. And this is the oil consumption and gas consumption, like BCM values up to 2050s for Turkey. And these are the balances as when we add our production estimations. As you see that we need lots of oil and gas to meet our demand. By the way, our new field, by assuming it's going to be produced here, you see, somehow change the dynamics. For example, instead of being like this, it's like this, you see. But this is not enough. By comparing with the general overview of the Turkish world, as you see, we are as our colleague Kenan described, we are getting oil and gas from Azerbaijan. We're transporting, by the way, we are not buying the oil, we are transporting the oil, but we're buying gas which is sailed from Shah Deniz to Turkey, and also we are also transmitting the gas to Europe from Turkey. By comparing with the other Turkish countries' reserves and productions and export volumes, Turkey is very small in this equation, and you can see the long-term projection graphs, which you can compare with the other Turkish countries. In the consumption values, in the consumption side, Turkey is the greatest, as you can see here with this color. But in the production side, you see here, Turkey has a very small portion in the general equation among the Turkish countries. And also, this is the export oil and gas export potentials of the Turkish countries. And you see the Azerbaijan, our other colleague has talked about Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. You see our export oil and gas export potentials of these countries. Turkey has currently not having any oil and gas export potential for today and for the future. We couldn't add it to these graphs and to this equation. To sum up, Turkey currently do not have couldn't catch a big fish in the oil and gas industry, but maybe in the future something may change. We're studying hard. We have catch the first big fish in our seas. Maybe we can. We hope this trend may continue. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you for your great presentation. And I think that time is over. And unfortunately, we don't have enough time to go through the discussion section. And maybe next time, through next session and through next conferences. And I just want to thank you all of you, dear speakers, and joining us and sharing your opinion, your thought, and your speech with us. Okay, so have a nice day, and we will continue with other session and just tunes in. Okay, go ahead and
Thank you.
goodbye. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.